This is part 2 of In His Own Words.
As a child, I would disappear into my imagination. This constant stream of images and colors and ideas were as real to me as real life. Sometimes even more so. Living in your own little world with your own rules can be an advantage sometimes. I could make my mind believe anything. I was able to cultivate an almost delusional level of confidence. As an adult, I realized that my imagination is my gift. And when it merges with my work ethic, I can make money rain from the heavens. I'm inspired to create when I live on the edge of my capacity and capabilities, right? So I like to do things right now. Let's start today. While we're rapping about it, let's be about it.
Will has the classic work hard, play hard mindset. A lot of his professional success, at least, could be traced to some of that. But this behavior is actually an example of what we refer to as a manic defense. It's like having a crutch, and I think he almost needs to be set up into impossible tasks to be able to push himself to excellence. There's a real seduction to it, but there's also a real danger. The book is an emotionally and physically exhausting exercise. Each chapter deals with a dominant emotion he's grappled with during different phases of his life. To do this is definitely going to take a psychological toll on Will. The thing is, Will, as a child, created a rich, imaginary world that ultimately we all got invited into through theater. And if that's how a person gets through childhood, you can easily see how that blurring between a real world and an imaginary world not only becomes a way to cope, but it could also become a way to escape.
Our first full studio session, day 9 in the Bahamas, was more like a night in a club. Jeff was DJing while we all sat around with girls and food and drinks. Occasionally, I would get up on the mic, more performing for the crowd than trying to innovate or create new music. Me and Jeff were unfocused and out of sync.
It seems like your life is like excelling, but it's actually falling apart. Yeah. Right? It really was, right? It really was.
When I bought my first motorcycle, a blue Suzuki Katana 600, I wasn't perceiving that as a medicinal reflex. Nor did I connect the purchase of my custom Suburban to my feelings of inadequacy, loss, and betrayal. I didn't correlate my cravings and my generally erratic behavior with the wounded state of my heart. The thing is, the bigger the fantasy you live, the more painful the inevitable collision with reality. The universe will slap you awake in the tune of 1,000 angry voices, and will invoke a painful and divinely perfect retribution.
That thing was jam-packed. You know what I noticed is that a lot of time children who are in traumatic situations growing up will lose themselves in some other world. And with my former husband, his thing was read. And he just read and read because that was his escape from the painful trauma in the moment. With Will, he just created this imaginary world because it would remove him from the reality of the situation he was in. That in itself is not enough. But you know what he called what I call his superpower, his supernatural power. When his imagination met his work ethic, he said he could make it rain money. Okay, served him well. But this is a perfect example of how we can do very well in our lives. I mean, have the major accomplishments, come on, and still be tore up from the floor up inside. As we go on, we'll hear a little bit more about how Will uses his imagination. But again, I wonder if you look into this man's eyes as he was reading or talking when they did the close-ups. There's so much turmoil and so much unresolved pain inside this man. How can your heart not go out to him? Let's go to the next clip.
Chapter 20, Surrender. I began to refer to my nice guy persona as Uncle Fluffy. He was the pleaser in me, the part of me that had to smile no matter how I was feeling. He wasn't allowed to be in a bad mood or have a bad day. He signed every autograph, shook every hand, kissed every baby. But Fluffy was further complicated by his shadow counterpart, the General. When I didn't get the approval I sought, my anguish would express itself as the General. The General's job was to get the flag to the top of the hill by any means necessary and to punish those who dared to dissent. Even myself.
Will is somebody who has been so rewarded by the world for putting his head down and grinding and getting the win. The first thing I think as a psychologist in his presence is, how the heck does this guy cope when he's not winning?
When I was maybe 10 years old, Daddy-O sent me to buy cigarettes. So I ran down the street like any soldier would have done. On my way back, I ran into David and Danny Brandon, who had just gotten this weird new thing called a Nerf football. I got lost in the ingenuity of this extraordinary object. Suddenly, I turn and my stomach drops. Daddy-O striding up the middle of the street right at me. What the hell are you doing? When I send you on a mission, there are two possibilities. One, you complete the mission. Or two, you are dead. Daddy-O grabbed me by the back of my neck and dragged me home. Most of the times I got hit during my childhood, I didn't think I'd earned it. I didn't think I deserved a whooping for that.
Somebody like Will is so relentlessly focused on achieving all of his goals, and so he doesn't consider his limits, whether it's fitness or his book or even filming this show. But the more a person is stretched, sooner or later, they snap.
Uncle Fluffy was born as my strategic childhood persona. If I was funny enough, sweet enough, harmless enough, entertaining enough, then I wouldn't be hurt. Fluffy wants to be approved of. It's the only safety he can conceive. But Uncle Fluffy is masking my true feelings.
There it is. There it is. You ain't never lied. So this is what's going on here. We just talked about his imagination. He has created Fluffy and the Sergeant. Okay? You notice how Fluffy always wants to be approved, and he's trying to be the funny man. He's trying to deflect. His Fluffy character could be called Mr. Control. What happens in trauma is that something happens inside some people where they have to do what's necessary to control the situation. And Will is playing off of control the whole time. He said several times, and I really encourage you to go watch the entire documentary, Best Shape of My Life. Beginning to end, you will be on the edge of your seat and you will see some of these dynamics playing out. So Mr. Fluffy is his way of keeping control. Okay? But like what's going on with the Sarge hovering over him? That's his dad's voice from the past. His dad's voice from the past, see? His dad's voice. Do this, do that, you know, I mean, he's just hearing that. So what happens when he fails at something or sees that he's going to fail at something, then what happens? We all are familiar with this dynamic now. He starts beating up on himself, up on himself, and then he becomes, his psyche becomes the Sarge, which is his dad's voice coming forward out of the past and driving him, and he's internalizing that as feeling bad about himself, self-loathing, beating up on himself. Why? Because he didn't have control of the situation. See, that's why I always tell you guys, what's really important is that we understand what we can control. What can we control? Now, there are 3 circles. The littlest circle in the middle is you and your sphere of control, your circle of control. Outside of that is like another circle. It becomes environmental. It's outside of yourself, and it can be close friends, family, whatever. Then the other circle, there are 3 total, is the world around you. You have to always understand, and it's going to be hard to root out where these negative mindsets and these self-defeating mindsets have crept like tentacles through our lives. But in every situation, every incident, you want to remember, where do I have control? In this current situation, over what do I have control, and over what do I not have control? And this in the moment can help you to feel less overwhelmed. It will focus you where you have control. Now, you master your circle of control, your sphere of control. And the more you master that, the greater your influence will be on the 2 outer circles. You can't control other people or other things like that. But trust me, when you get good control over your sphere of control, you will begin to have greater influence on the other outer circles. So for instance, I'm in this irritating relationship with this narcissist, say, and I stay in a state of imbalance because of his gaslighting or his inability to see that he's the problem. Now, as long as I stay focused on him and his behaviors, the less I'm dealing with where I do have control. I have no control over that joker. So now this is the deal. Where do I have control, and what's my next best move? In my case with the narcissist, it was to remove the situation. Period. Okay? Told me straight up to my face, I'm not going to change. That's all I needed to hear, you son of a gun. Bah! Okay? I had control because he was in my house. That day, he was no longer in my house, and that was 8 years ago. I got nothing to say to this joker, okay? I had control within my sphere of control, and then by doing that and focusing there, I eliminated the irritation. Like a bug bugging you, keep flying around your ear. Freaking mosquito, just an aggravation, but I digress. So, Will's whole thing is control now. Look, did you all see any of the situation where they had the reunion of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air? And he had a one-on-one with Janet Hubert, who played the original mom. And to me, she was the best mom on the show. And she was talking about she didn't understand how he was acting back then. It had some negative repercussions in her personal life because she lost that job, and apparently she said it had effect on her career going forward because she was labeled the angry black woman.
I was 21 years old.
Yeah.
You know,
I know. I know.
Everything was a threat to me.
Why was I a threat?
Not you, the world. I was so driven by fear and jokes and comedy and all of that.
Yeah, you were live. You were live. You were live.
You know.
But what you didn't realize either, that I was going through a lot at home.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You didn't know. You guys didn't know. Very abusive marriage.
You know, I have children.
Yeah.
I've been divorced and got a second marriage, and I can see now the level of pain and the level of struggle that it was for you just to show up every day. And then...
But you took all that away from me.
Mm-hmm.
With your words. You know, words can kill.
Mm-hmm.
I lost everything. Reputation, everything. And I understand you were able to move forward, but you know those words, calling a Black woman difficult in Hollywood is the kiss of death. It's the kiss of death, and it's hard enough being a dark-skinned Black woman in this business. But I felt it was necessary for us to finally move forward.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry that I have blasted you to pieces.
No, it is, this show and not celebrate you. Celebrate your contribution to this show, celebrate your contribution to my life, you know, and...
Come here, you.
The person I want to be is someone who protects you, not someone that unleashes dogs on you. And however...
I appreciate that.
You know, it's...
I appreciate that. I have to say, after 27 years, being here today and having the conversation that Will and I had together, it's healing. I was watching the dance episode the other day, and that's become one of the crazy, iconic...
Yeah.
They send me videos from all over the world.
On TikTok
of their mamas
right now.
doing it.
I know.
Yeah, mamas.
Listen, the Aunt Viv, boy, rocking the Aunt Viv.
Yes.
You still my Aunt Viv. You still my Aunt Viv.
It's so weird. You know, we've said such hateful things about each other publicly. And I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
And I'm sorry, too. We good?
We good.
We good.
We are good.
This wasn't in the original reaction video, but after watching the clip you just saw of the reunion between Will and Janet Hubert, it just tore me up. And I wanted to interject about that. Oh, man. The reason it's so emotional for me to watch is I know that feeling when you can forgive and so let me just say it like this. Some of you already know some of my life story, and in it, part of it was having to run from a marriage, an abusive marriage. And it's the reason I left school when I only had like a year to go. It'd be 20 years before I'd finish that degree. My ex-husband remarried. And he's still with the woman he remarried. Oh my goodness. And in Texas for a work conference. And his wife was kind enough to have me over for the evening. And I can't tell you what that did for me. It's like I had long forgiven him, but over the years when we would talk, he would always be so sorry. And he couldn't let it go. He couldn't forgive himself. It was the best evening, you guys. She cooked arroz con pollo. And she sat at this end of the long table. I was here and he was down there. And while she was cooking, he and I were kicking it. We even talked about what was going on inside, just like Will did here. We talked about what was going on inside him at the time. And I think that finally he could forgive himself. And we had a great evening of reminiscing about different people that he and I both knew. It was just the best evening. And that she was so sweet and so kind to facilitate that. It's like she, really what she did was she glued multiple families together. So that my daughter, that's her father, didn't have to feel guilty about calling Gracie. I'm just going to say her name, calling Gracie, Mama Gracie and all of that. And before I even had this trip, I told my daughter, you don't have to ever feel guilty about that. You know, you can call her Mama if you want to. It's not an offense to me, but even as grown as my daughter was, that tears a child up, feeling like they're being disloyal to one parent because they're a parent to be loyal to the other. So it was just, now that was off of the table. She didn't have to ever worry about that. It was just the best evening. And when I left there, I felt like there was like this breeze, an ocean breeze. This is going to make no sense. Okay. But it felt like an ocean breeze was coming through my chest. And it was just a wonderful time. And that woman didn't have to do that. But that's her heart. That's truly Gracie's heart. She's demonstrated that in various areas of their lives. And you guys, I was so stupid. You know, I'm sitting there. I made the huge mistake of looking up when she was looking at him with loving eyes. And honey, I went into an ugly cry. I'm a fingernail from an ugly cry right now, because of the love that was in her eyes for him. And I just told her, the love in your eye. I'm so grateful that he found a loving relationship. They've been together well over 20 years. And I've never remarried. Oh, yes, I did. I remarried. Well, look, y'all gonna get the whole story before it's over. But he remarried once. I remarried once, but he's still with his spouse. So Gracie, if you're watching this, I've told you 100 ways to Sunday and 100 million times what that evening meant to me. It was so wonderful to just sit there and to see the love you have for him. And you guys, the reason why I'm telling you all of this, break it down crying, is because I'm not saying everybody changes, but people change. And he didn't want to read the book, right? So I was talking about, I don't want to read about me and everything, yada, yada, yada. I didn't do a whole lot of talk about him in the book or my ex, because I was told by the Lord to write the book that I had to be honest about myself and compassionate toward my wrongdoers. So it was more about me doing the goofy and everything. But I did a video, I think last week, talking about how we see the good in people. This guy has a really good heart. He has a really good heart. We started going together. You already know I was pregnant my very first month in college. I said that in some video. So anyway, and he and I started going together. I was well into my pregnancy and he knew it wasn't his child. He knew it wasn't his child, but he loved me anyway. Okay. And his family was there for me where mine was too far away. It's just a whole story. Like me in labor and his dad trying to get me to a hospital and getting stuck in the elevator. You think that crap just happens in sitcoms, but no, it had to happen to my happy hiney. But anyway, I just wanted to put this in here and let you know that that's a touching thing when two people who have been at odds for so long and so much damage done. He can see now in hindsight what he did, but right then, like he said, everybody was an enemy. He'd already talked about Mr. Fluffy, and Mr. Fluffy wasn't working in that situation. She was trying to be professional. This lady came off the stage, so she wasn't understanding his antics, and because she didn't appear to respond to him, then he started talking, well, the damage is done. Like I told you, your best intentions will never outweigh the impact of your behaviors. The damage was done, but for them to be able to come together after so many years, it just was touching to me for all the reasons I just told you. Let's get back to the video. And she had no clue about all the stuff Will is telling us about himself now. As a teenage boy, Will didn't know all these dynamics. He was just going through life. He was still Mr. Funny Man, Mr. Fluff, trying to make everybody happy. And Janet Hubert was pretty serious and professional, and she didn't think that crap was funny. So when she wasn't laughing, what did he do? It threw him off of his control pedestal. He didn't have any control over that. So what happened? It got bitter. She got kicked off the program, yada, yada. That's how Will wanted it. Well, now that he's understanding some of the dynamics in his life, then he came back and allowed her to tell him what that looked like to her and the effect it had on her life. And they got back together and understood each other. So what I told you all that to say this: Will, until he addresses these demons inside, he will always have issues with female relationships. Let's watch the next clip so that you can find out why I say that. Hey, if you like what you see here today, please subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so that you know when we upload, and like and share the video. Thanks.